You ever have one of those mornings where you wake up, step outside with your coffee, take a deep breath, and immediately feel like something is off? That was me. I was standing on my porch in my slippers, the sun barely rising, and all I could see was the back of a silver SUV parked sideways across my driveway. Right across it. Like she wanted me to see it first thing. I knew whose car it was. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. It belonged to Cynthia, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, better known around here as Karen of the cul-de-sac. This wasn't the first time she had pulled something, but it was the most obvious. She knew I left for work early. She knew exactly where I parked. And yet, there her car was, completely blocking my only exit. It wasn't just petty. It was intentional. And that morning as I stood there staring at her car, something snapped in me. I wasn't going to play nice anymore. Hello, beautiful people. Before we dive into this story, if HOA Karens drive you crazy too, you're in the right place. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Just one click makes a huge difference. Now let's get into it. The story really starts a few months back when I finished building my detached garage. I'd saved for years and finally had enough to put one up behind my house. I made sure it followed every single HOA guideline. Every permit. Every setback. Even the ridiculous roof color must match the neighborhood theme nonsense. It was all by the book. But Cynthia didn't like it. Because she said it ruined the aesthetic flow of the block. I laughed at that. So did the city inspector. But she didn't stop. First, it was fake complaints about noise. Then lawn inspections. Then letters about excessive dust from my driveway. Petty, exhausting nonsense, all aimed at making me tear down the garage. The final straw came after I got a delivery of gravel to redo my driveway. I came home to find Cynthia yelling at the delivery guy, saying I was disrupting the community peace. She actually called the cops over gravel man. That was 2 weeks ago. And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to beat her at her own game. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to go to war at the HOA board. I was going to build something she'd never forget. So the very next day, I called a local contractor. And then another. And another. I explained the plan. I wanted to dig a trench, yes, a literal trench, around the front of my driveway, wide enough and deep enough that no one could ever block me in again. Then I'd install a working, fully legal drawbridge. I expected at least one of them to laugh me off the phone. Instead, one guy said, "Dude, that's insane." But I'm in. We checked codes, got clearance from the city, because again, I don't play dirty, I play smart, and 2 days later, the digging began. When the HOA sent me an angry letter asking what I was doing, I sent back a one-sentence reply. Constructing a legal access modification to prevent ongoing harassment. I included documentation, permits, diagrams. Cynthia must have had a meltdown when she saw that. But the best part? She had no idea what I was really building. When the first digger rolled into my yard, I swear the neighborhood stopped breathing. It was like someone dropped a spaceship in the cul-de-sac. Curtains twitched. Lawnmowers paused mid-chop. And right on cue, Cynthia came stomping out of her house in her matching beige sweatsuit and clipboard in hand like she was about to hand out parking tickets in a war zone. She stood at the edge of my property with that same twisted smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. "Excuse me," she snapped, loud enough for the workers to hear, "what exactly are you doing here?" Without even looking up, the contractor shouted, "Digging a moat." She turned red. "You're what?" I walked up calmly, coffee in hand, and handed her the printed permits. "Everything's legal. I'm simply modifying my access point. It's a trench now. And eventually, a drawbridge." "You can't be serious," she hissed. "Oh, but I am," I said. "And the HOA can't stop it. You want to block my driveway? Try it now." Cynthia tried to protest, threatened to call the board, even hinted at legal action. But the paperwork was airtight. This wasn't just about pettiness anymore. This was about boundaries, literal and figurative. And for once, I wasn't the one crossing them. The trench took 3 days to dig. It stretched across the front of my driveway, about 10 feet wide, 6 feet deep, and curved at the ends like something out of a castle defense manual. The guys even added support beams and cemented the walls so it wouldn't collapse. It was sturdy, it was legit, and it was a massive, undeniable, "don't mess with me" sign in trench form. By day 4, the drawbridge parts started arriving. Let me tell you, the look on Cynthia's face when the crane lifted the wooden platform into place? Priceless. It was like someone told her HOA fees were being tripled and her wine subscription was cancelled on the same day. She watched from across the street as the bridge settled into the trench with perfectly aligned chains, winches, and locking systems. One of the workers even joked, "You want us to add a moat too? Maybe some alligators?" I laughed. HOA wouldn't approve reptiles. By the end of the week, my driveway was now the most talked about feature in the county. Neighbors who had avoided me before were now stopping by, laughing, giving me thumbs up. One guy said, "Bro, this is the most legendary petty move I've ever seen." But it wasn't just about pettiness. It was about standing up for myself. For 6 months, I let this woman control every detail of my property. I played by the rules while she twisted them. I watched her belittle others, intimidate newcomers, and bully anyone who didn't fall in line with her step-forward neighborhood fantasy. Now, she couldn't even park her car in front of my place without falling into a trench. Victory tasted like fresh asphalt and wood polish. But I wasn't done yet, because karma has a funny way of circling back, and I was about to see it happen in real time when the next HOA meeting rolled around. The HOA meeting was just a few days after my drawbridge went up, and oh boy, you could feel the tension crackling like static in the room. I walked in casually, grabbed a donut from the refreshment table, and took my seat like I hadn't just turned the neighborhood into a medieval stronghold. Meanwhile, Cynthia was already there, papers in hand, whispering fiercely to 2 other board members like she was planning a coup. I leaned back and waited. The meeting kicked off with the usual boring stuff: lawn care violations, streetlight repairs, pool hours, but then Cynthia stood up, dramatically slapping a manila folder onto the table like it held the secrets to the universe. "I'd like to propose a new amendment," she declared, regarding structural modifications that disrupt community aesthetics. Several people looked confused. She continued, specifically, installations that are extreme, unnecessary, or designed to intimidate neighbors. You didn't need a law degree to figure out she was talking about me. I raised my hand. "So, basically, anything you personally don't like?" The room chuckled. Cynthia didn't. She opened the folder and started listing complaints she had gathered, mostly from herself, her cousin on the next street over, and someone named Anonymous who wrote in suspiciously perfect cursive. She cited community cohesion, visual disruption, and even said kids were emotionally distressed by the trench. I almost spit out my coffee. One of the other board members, Carol, raised an eyebrow. "Didn't we approve his renovation through permits? Legally, I mean." "Yes," Cynthia snapped. "But just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right." Another member asked, "Has anyone actually been hurt? Or complained besides you?" Cynthia's voice dropped to a whiny pitch. "It's not about hurt. It's about principle." That's when I calmly slid my own folder across the table. It had high-res photos, emails, timestamps, everything documenting Cynthia blocking my driveway, including witness statements from neighbors and the literal footage from my doorbell cam of her placing a garbage can in my way. The best part? I had screenshots of her texting the board saying, "Let's make him snap so we can fine him." Yeah. She really did that. The room fell silent. Then Carol looked at Cynthia and said, "Cynthia, I think you need to take a break from your position. This feels personal." Cynthia turned pale. "You can't do that," she gasped. "I'm the president." "Not anymore," said another board member, pulling out HOA bylaws. "We're calling an emergency vote. Right now." And just like that, with a 5-1 vote, Cynthia was removed from her position as HOA president. The lone vote in her favor? Herself. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, grabbed another donut, and walked out like a boss. Later that week, she posted a furious rant on Facebook calling me a maniac with a bridge fetish and claimed I was ruining suburbia. The post got shared over 300 times. But the comments? all on my side. People were calling me a legend. One guy even wrote, "Build a castle next, king." Face with tears of joy. When Cynthia stormed out of the HOA meeting, clutching her manila folder like it was a lifeline, I honestly expected things to calm down. I thought people would forget about the Drawbridge saga within a week. But what happened next? I never saw coming. In the days that followed her dramatic downfall, something in the neighborhood shifted. At first, it was just quiet. No more angry glares from Cynthia's windows. No more HOA notices stuffed in my mailbox about the length of my grass or unapproved decorations. I wasn't used to the silence, and to be honest, I didn't trust it. It felt like the calm before another storm. But instead of a storm, the strangest thing happened. My neighbors started talking to me again. The Johnsons from across the street, who had always nodded awkwardly but never said more than, "Nice weather today," came over with fresh lemonade and asked to see the drawbridge up close. "I thought you were crazy at first," Mr. Johnson said with a grin, "but that thing's genius. I'd love to put one in myself, just to keep my teenagers from sneaking out." Then the Simmons kids started riding their bikes by my property, daring each other to go across the bridge. I ended up turning it into a little drawbridge demo every Saturday morning. I'd lift and lower it for them while they cheered like I was operating a roller coaster. People loved it. It became the neighborhood's new favorite, weird but cool thing. Even some of the HOA board members, who had previously been distant, began waving at me more often. Carol, the one who had called the emergency vote, came by to say, "I just wanted to thank you." Cynthia was making the whole board miserable, but nobody had the guts to stand up to her until you did. Honestly, that hit harder than I expected. For so long, I'd been painted as the unreasonable one, the guy who took things too far. But now, I was finally being seen for what I was, a guy who was just trying to protect his own property and sanity. Then came the local newspaper. No joke. A small-town reporter reached out asking if she could write a feature on the Drawbridge guy. I laughed so hard when I read the email, I nearly dropped my phone. But I agreed. She came by with a photographer, and I told the whole story, starting with Cynthia blocking my driveway and ending with the trench and bridge I had legally constructed. The next weekend, the headline read, "Newspaper blocked by HOA? Man builds drawbridge around his home, becomes local legend." It got shared on Facebook by dozens of people. Then it found its way onto Reddit, first in r/entitled people, then in r/pro-revenge. And before I knew it, my inbox was full of messages from total strangers. People thanking me, sharing their own HOA horror stories, even asking for blueprints for the trench. My story had become something bigger. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about standing up to ridiculous authority, about finding creative and legal ways to push back, and about reclaiming power in your own life, even if that meant digging a literal moat around your problems. But the best moment? One quiet evening, I was sitting on my porch when a woman I barely recognized walked up with a little girl holding her hand. It was Sharon, a neighbor from the other block. We'd never really spoken before. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "My daughter has autism, and all the HOA drama over decorations and lawn signs was stressing her out. Cynthia made our lives hell. But now that she's gone, it's peaceful again. She sleeps better. I sleep better." That nearly broke me. It reminded me that this wasn't just about me and Cynthia. It was about every person she had quietly bullied or controlled. People who hadn't had the energy, or the platform, to fight back. I was just the first domino to fall in the right direction. And while I never asked to be the drawbridge guy, I was proud of what that trench symbolized now. Boundaries. Strength. And a little bit of ridiculous brilliance. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that some people just don't know when to quit. And Cynthia? She was the queen of not letting go. After the article in the local paper came out, and my bridge made the rounds online, I guess Cynthia felt her control slipping through her fingers for good. For most people, that would be the end of the story. Get removed from your HOA throne, take the L, maybe reflect a little, and move on. But Cynthia? She saw her dethroning as a personal vendetta, and she wanted payback. It started subtle. A mysterious complaint showed up in my mailbox one morning. It wasn't on HOA letterhead, just a typed note with the words, "Your structure violates setback rules, expect city code enforcement." No name. No signature. I chuckled. I already knew my bridge and trench were well within code. I had gone through every hoop imaginable before construction began. Cynthia clearly underestimated how seriously I had taken this from the beginning. But still, I kept my eye out. Sure enough, 3 days later, a city inspector knocked on my door. "Hey," he said politely. "Just here for a quick checkup on a complaint. Honestly, it's probably nothing." He walked the property, checked my permits, took a few pictures, and gave a low whistle at the bridge. "This is kinda badass," he said. "Honestly, I expected something sketchy, but you did this by the book." I asked him if the complaint had a name attached. He gave me a knowing smile. "Let's just say, this isn't the first property this person's tried to report for non-existent violations." Cynthia was getting desperate. But that wasn't the end of it. A week later, I caught her sneaking up to my property line at night. Yes, at night. With a flashlight. She was trying to measure the trench with a tape measure and some kind of yardstick contraption. My ring cam caught the whole thing. I walked out, flashlight in hand, and just said, "Looking for buried treasure, Cynthia?" She jumped like she'd seen a ghost and scurried off like a raccoon caught in headlights. The next day, I did what any self-respecting modern citizen would do. I posted the footage online with the caption, "When the HOA Karen you got removed tries to ninja audit your moat at 11 p.m. You good, Cynthia?" That clip went super viral. TikTok, Reddit, even Instagram Reels. Within 48 hours, I had messages from influencers, podcasters, even a YouTube channel that covers neighborhood nightmares asking to interview me. My channel blew up. Subscribers were rolling in. People were loving the updates. And in the comments, everyone was cheering for me and roasting Cynthia mercilessly. Someone even made a meme of her sneaking with the text, "When you get kicked off the HOA but still need your daily dose of control." I didn't post it to be mean, but I wasn't going to protect someone who made my life hell either. If she was willing to stalk my house at night, people deserved to know. And you know what the best part was? The HOA board held another vote. This time, to install a new rule, any member caught harassing, stalking, or maliciously reporting another resident could be banned from all meetings for 6 months. Guess who that rule was nicknamed after? The Cynthia Clause. The neighborhood was finally healing. No more daily drama. No more threats. Kids were playing outside again. Neighbors were actually talking. And as for me, I just kept doing my thing, raising the drawbridge when I wanted privacy, lowering it when I had guests over. Funny how a trench in front of your house can lead to a whole community feeling closer. So yeah, Cynthia made one last attempt to take me down. And she failed, again. Because when your foundation is built on spite, and mine's built on concrete, permits, and peace, you're never going to win. If someone had told me 3 months ago that digging a trench and building a drawbridge would lead to the wildest, most unexpectedly amazing chapter of my life, I would have laughed in their face. But here I am now, living a reality that feels part sitcom, part documentary, and a little bit fairy tale. Minus the dragon, unless you count Cynthia. After the viral videos, late-night footage, HOA takedown, and the Cynthia Clause, things didn't just return to normal. No, they evolved. My story became more than neighborhood drama. It became a symbol of sticking it to petty power, of taking creative control over your life, and of doing it with a little flair. And apparently, the world loves flair. Let's start with my YouTube channel. At first, I had maybe 70 subscribers. Most of them friends who never watched a single upload. But then the Drawbridge Karen video hit 500,000 views, and the subscriber count started growing like weeds in Cynthia's obsessively trimmed lawn. I wasn't doing anything fancy at first. Just storytime videos, how I beat my HOA with a moat, when Cynthia called the cops on my mailbox, and top 5 most ridiculous HOA rules ever. But people ate it up. I started getting messages from people all over the world, Australia, Canada, even someone from Sweden, telling me about their own nightmare neighbors and HOAs. I'd never felt so connected. So seen. So vindicated. One guy messaged me, Dude, you inspired me to stand up to my HOA about my backyard greenhouse. I showed them your video. Guess what? They backed off. Another wrote, I've been afraid to speak out for years. Your story gave me courage. You're a hero, man. A hero. The guy who just didn't want his driveway blocked. Then came the interviews. Local news stations wanted to do follow-ups. Podcasters invited me to tell the full saga. One show flew me out for an HOA horror story segment. And when they introduced me as the Drawbridge dude, I swear the live audience cheered. But the most surreal moment? Netflix reached out. No joke. A producer DM'd me and said they were scouting stories for a docuseries about neighborhood wars, and mine was the perfect balance of hilarious and heartfelt. I had to read the message 5 times before I believed it wasn't a prank. Nothing's official yet, but we're in early talks. I went from fixing leaky gutters to possibly starring in a streaming series. All because a woman tried to control my property, and I decided to fight back with humor, patience, and a little engineering. And guess who sent me another message? Cynthia. She messaged me on Facebook after months of silence. It was unexpected. The tone was different. No threats. No passive-aggressive insults. I realize now that I might have gone too far. Maybe the HOA role got to my head. I hope things are better now, for both of us. I didn't reply. Not because I hate her. I just didn't need to. Her reign is over. My peace is restored. The neighborhood is thriving. And me? Well, I'm not just a guy with a drawbridge anymore. I'm the guy who turned revenge into resilience. Who built a boundary and found a community. Who turned pettiness into a platform, and kept his sense of humor through it all. These days, when I lift that drawbridge, it's not out of anger. It's out of pride. And every time a new subscriber joins or someone leaves a comment saying, "This made my day," I remember exactly why I told this story. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's clever, creative, and just a little bit legendary.